Angelina Jolie sold her stake in a French winery for tens of millions of dollars, and it started a legal war with Brad Pitt that's still going in courtrooms right now. She's also built a fashion house, a jewelry line, and decades of humanitarian infrastructure, completely outside the film industry that made her famous. Rich isn't just a number here. It's a pattern of turning every payday, every partnership, and every heartbreak into something she owns outright. That's where this story starts. Before Angelina Jolie ever built a business, she had to become the most expensive actress on the planet. That's the foundation everything else sits on, and it happened faster than almost anyone in Hollywood history. Jolie didn't stumble into acting late in life. She was born into it. Her breakout role was in the 1995 cult favorite Hackers, playing hacker Kate "Acid Burn" Libby, and by 1999 she'd already won an Oscar. She had a bit part in her father's 1982 film Lookin' to Get Out when she was only 7. So by the time real stardom arrived, she'd already spent 2 decades circling the industry. That mattered, because when the money finally showed up, she wasn't starstruck by it. She treated it like a tool. The Oscar came for Girl, Interrupted, where she won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. Critical acclaim is nice, but it doesn't pay for real estate in the south of France. What actually built her fortune was a video game character. Her role as Lara Croft in Lara Croft: Tomb Raider in 2001 established her as a bankable action star, and that single franchise turned her from a respected character actress into a global box office name. Studios don't pay character actress money for that. They pay action star money, and the checks that followed were enormous. She routinely earned big paychecks for movies like Wanted at $15 million, The Tourist at $20 million, and Mr. and Mrs. Smith at $10 million. For a woman who started out doing small biographical cable films, that's a staggering leap in less than a decade. But the number that really cemented her as an industry heavyweight came from a fairy tale villain. To portray the title character in the 2014 fantasy film Maleficent, Jolie earned $33 million, according to Time, making her the highest-paid actress of 2013. $33 million for one movie, at a moment when very few women in Hollywood could command anything close to that. She'd hit that number before, too, in different eras. Earlier in her career, she'd already been named Hollywood's highest-paid actress by Forbes in 2009 and 2011, which tells you this wasn't a one-off spike. It was sustained, repeated dominance across more than a decade of movie paychecks. And even her Marvel money, decades into her career, kept the streak alive. She reportedly earned more than $35 million to play Thena in the 2021 film Eternals. Here's the thing about acting money, though. It's finite. You get paid per project, per contract. And when the phone stops ringing, so does the income. Jolie seemed to understand that risk earlier than most of her peers, and it shaped everything that came next. Instead of just banking checks and waiting for the next role, she was already quietly building something that didn't depend on a studio calling her back. That something started in Cambodia, of all places, on the set of the movie that made her famous in the first place. Filming Tomb Raider in Cambodia in 2000 exposed her to poverty and refugees, and she contacted UNHCR for more information. That trip is the hinge point of this entire story. It's the moment a Lara Croft paycheck turned into something much bigger than a paycheck. By the following year, she wasn't just donating money from a distance. She was officially appointed Goodwill Ambassador for the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees in a ceremony in Geneva, becoming, at 26, one of the youngest people ever given that title. And she didn't treat the title like a photo op since March of that year. She'd already made arduous field visits to refugee camps in Sierra Leone, Tanzania, Cambodia, and Pakistan, insisting on covering all her own costs and living in the same conditions as UNHCR field staff. That detail matters more than it sounds like it should. A movie star sleeping in a refugee camp instead of a hotel isn't a normal use of $33 million movie money. It tells you she wasn't building a brand around charity. She was building a life around it, and the money from acting was just the fuel. That distinction, Fuel versus identity is the whole story of Angelina Jolie's wealth. The acting paychecks were never the endpoint. They were the seed capital for a life that eventually included real estate in France, a fashion house in Manhattan, a jewelry line funding girls' schools, and one of the ugliest, most expensive divorces in Hollywood history. But none of that happens without the box office numbers first. You can't fund a foundation, buy a French chateau, or survive an 8-year legal war without first having been, for a decade, the most bankable actress alive. By the early 2010s, Jolie had 2 parallel tracks running at full speed, a film career generating 8-figure paydays and a humanitarian career that had made her one of the most recognized human rights advocates in the world. She'd been appointed special envoy to UN High Commissioner Antonio Guterres and had met with refugees, officials, and relief groups in over 30 countries. She was also by then a mother to 6 children, a director, and, increasingly, a businesswoman, because the money and the mission were about to collide in a jewelry box. That collision is where her financial story stops being about salaries and starts being about ownership. Every rich person eventually faces the same fork in the road: keep collecting paychecks or start building assets that generate money. Without you personally showing up on set, Jolie's fork came dressed as a diamond ring. Back in 2000, right around the time she was filming in Cambodia, she met jewelry designer Robert Prokop, and the two struck up a personal and professional connection. Prokop wasn't just any jeweler. He was a gemstone dealer with a track record of turning philanthropy into a business model. He'd used profits from his own gemstone collections to build 14 homes for battered women and children through the Los Angeles House of Ruth. In Jolie, he found someone who thought the exact same way about money, that it was only interesting if it moved somewhere useful. Prokop would go on to design one of the most famous engagement rings in celebrity history a decade later. He worked with Brad Pitt for more than a year creating the ring, a flawless oblong diamond circled by smaller stones, totaling roughly 16 carats. That ring made headlines because of the romance attached to it. But the business relationship underneath it had already been running for years, and it had nothing to do with romance at all. In 2010, Jolie and Prokop turned their partnership into an actual venture, a jewelry line called Style of Jolie. The proceeds of jewels from the Jolie-Prokop collaboration went to Jolie's charity, the Education Partnership for Children of Conflict. This wasn't a licensing deal where she slapped her name on a product and collected a royalty check. 100% of the profits went toward building schools for girls in impoverished countries. She wasn't taking a cut. She built the entire business to have zero personal cut. Every dollar routed straight into a nonprofit she'd co-founded. That's a strange business decision if you're only thinking about Jolie's personal balance sheet. But if you're thinking about Jolie's actual goal, leverage, reach, and permanent infrastructure that outlives any single movie role, it makes perfect sense. The jewelry wasn't sold in stores. The pieces were sold only by private appointment to Prokop's clients, appearing at high-end auctions and pop-up shops in the south of France and Monaco. That's a luxury goods distribution strategy, run with the discipline of an actual company, aimed entirely at funding girls' education in conflict zones. The pieces themselves were serious jewelry, not celebrity merchandise. One of the most striking examples ended up in the Smithsonian, a yellow citrine necklace from the Style of Jolie collection, featuring 64 graduated citrine gems and a 177-carat pear-shaped citrine drop, was donated to the Smithsonian's National Gem Collection and put on permanent display. A movie star's charity jewelry line sitting in the same museum as the Hope Diamond. That's not a hobby. That's an operation with real institutional credibility. Why does this matter to the bigger story? Because it establishes a pattern that repeats for the rest of Jolie's financial life. She doesn't build businesses that exist purely to enrich her. She builds businesses that exist to fund a mission, and the wealth accumulates as a byproduct of scale, reputation, and, eventually, real estate and brand equity she does personally own. The jewelry line taught her how to run a supply chain, manage a brand partnership, and negotiate with luxury industry professionals. Those are exactly the skills she'd need a decade later, when she launched something far bigger and far riskier, her own fashion house. But first, something had to break, because the jewelry line, the UNHCR missions, the movie paychecks, all of that had been happening inside a fairly stable, if unconventional, family life. Jolie had married Brad Pitt in 2014 at a property the two of them had bought together years earlier in the south of France, a 1,300-acre wine estate called Chateau Miraval. The couple purchased a controlling interest in the property back in 2008 as a home to share with their children and the vineyard as a family business. It was romantic. It was also, unbeknownst to either of them at the time, about to become the single most expensive asset dispute of either of their careers. That chateau is where the next chapter of Jolie's financial life gets built, and then very publicly torn apart. Every asset a rich person owns is a bet on the future. Jolie's biggest bet, Chateau Miraval, was supposed to be a family legacy. Instead, it became the site of the longest-running financial fight of her life, and understanding it is the key to understanding what rich actually costs her. Jolie and Pitt didn't just buy a house in Provence. They bought a working winery, and they built a brand around it together, releasing wines that became genuinely successful commercial products. The estate itself was eventually valued in the neighborhood of $164 million. The two exes had spent years fighting over the estate. Described as a $164 million French estate, that's not a vacation home. That's a financial institution disguised as a vineyard. Jolie filed for divorce from Pitt in 2016, and the marriage's collapse eventually spilled into custody battles that dragged on for years. By the time the personal side of the split was mostly resolved, the business side, specifically, who controlled Miraval, was just getting started. In late 2021, Jolie made a move that would define the rest of the decade for both of them. She sold her share of the vineyard to Tenute Del Mondo, a subsidiary of Russia-born billionaire Yuri Shefler's Stoli Group drinks conglomerate. She did this, according to a source close to the situation, because she and her children had not been able to return to Chateau Miraval, and she had made multiple offers to sell her stake to her ex-husband first, before eventually signing the deal with Shefler. Pitt didn't see it that way at all. Early the following year, he sued her. Pitt claimed the two had agreed they would never sell their respective interests in Miraval without the other's consent, and accused Jolie of breaking that promise. His legal filing went further, accusing her of trying to actively damage him. Pitt's amended complaint argued that Jolie sought to inflict harm on him with the sale and described Shefler as a stranger with poisonous associations and intentions. He also went after the buyer directly, framing the entire deal as an ambush. Pitt accused the company Jolie sold to of launching a hostile takeover of Miraval. Jolie's side did not sit quietly through any of this. Her company, called Nouvelle, fired back with a countersuit that painted an entirely different picture, one where she wasn't the aggressor, but the person being frozen out of an asset she co-owned. Nouvelle's claim alleged that although Miraval generated tens of millions of dollars in profits, Pitt ensured Jolie would never see a dime, shutting her out of managing the growing wine business and intentionally devaluing her investment. The countersuit didn't ask for a symbolic amount either. It sought damages of at least $250 million. For context, that's roughly 7 times what Pitt was seeking from her in return. This is the moment where the rich life premise of Jolie's story stops being about red carpet paychecks and starts being about corporate-level litigation. We're talking about hostile takeover language, oligarch accusations, and a $250 million countersuit over a vineyard 2 people bought as a family home. That's the scale rich people operate at when a marriage ends and nobody agrees on who owns what. The legal fight didn't stay contained to boardroom language either. It got personal fast. Nouvelle's filing accused Pitt of embarking on a multifaceted, years-long campaign to seize control of Chateau Miraval and appropriate the company's assets for his own benefit in what it called retaliation for the divorce and custody proceedings. And the dispute kept evolving. Years after the original sale, Pitt's legal team was still trying to pry open Jolie's private records, seeking financial documentation from years before the sale, arguing they were relevant to her claims about why she sold her interest in the winery. Jolie's team pushed back hard on that framing. She argued that Pitt was mischaracterizing her position and that seeking financial independence from an ex-husband is not the same thing as claiming financial distress. The fight has been slow and brutal in the way only high-net-worth divorce litigation can be. Attorneys have sparred over privileged emails, over depositions, over whether Jolie's advisors worried her public comments might disparage Pitt and damage the brand. A statement from her side said the ongoing effort to obtain her privileged communications was the manifestation of years-long harassment, while Pitt's team maintained the emails, could prove the sale was orchestrated with malice. As recently as this year, Pitt's side was still seeking a specific figure in damages: $35 million in alleged economic and reputational harm tied to the 2021 sale. Here's what this whole saga teaches about wealth at Jolie's level. Ownership isn't a clean, single transaction. When you build something jointly, a vineyard, a brand, a marriage, untangling who owns what afterward can cost more in legal fees and years than the original purchase price. Jolie walked away from Miraval with a real number attached to her name. Reports suggested she was roughly $80 million richer from divorce-related transactions, though that figure wasn't a single settlement payment. It appears to bundle the reported $64 million Miraval sale together with the $11.5 million sale of a Winston Churchill painting Pitt had once given her as a gift. Even that windfall came with strings. The same report noted she was expected to repay an $8 million house loan Pitt had extended her. So by the mid-2020s, Jolie was simultaneously one of the wealthiest actresses in Hollywood history and locked in a courtroom battle that could cost her tens of millions more before it's finished. That tension, being asset-rich and legally embattled at the same time, is exactly the environment that pushed her toward the next phase of her financial life. If a shared French winery could become this complicated, she needed something entirely her own, something with her name on the door and nobody else's signature required. That's exactly what she built next, in a former artist's loft in downtown Manhattan. If Miraval taught Jolie anything, it's that co-ownership with an ex-partner is a liability. So her next major venture wasn't a licensing deal, wasn't a joint estate, and wasn't a passive investment. It was a business she built, named, and controlled from the ground up. And she picked a launch strategy nobody expected from a movie star. In the spring of 2023, while the Miraval litigation was still grinding through discovery disputes, Jolie announced a completely new venture. She described a newfangled kind of fashion house, in which consumers play the role of the designer, inviting them to collaborate with tailors, pattern makers, and artisans to create unique fashion statements. She called it Atelier Jolie. And unlike almost every other celebrity fashion label, it wasn't built around her face or her red carpet image at all. In a mission statement, she asked why anyone would simply buy the design of another person when they could create it themselves. This is worth sitting with for a second, because it's a genuinely unusual business model. While countless celebrities simply lend their famous names and faces to various fashion projects, Jolie described her venture as more of a creative collective. Most celebrity brands are essentially licensing arrangements. A name gets attached to a product someone else designed and manufactured, and the celebrity collects a fee or a royalty. Jolie built the opposite structure, a physical creative space where customers become part of the design process themselves, working alongside professional artisans. The sustainability angle wasn't just marketing language either. The studio was described as focused on sustainability, using curated quality, vintage material, and deadstock fabric rather than new production. She partnered with major names to give the venture instant credibility in an industry that doesn't automatically respect celebrity fashion projects. The fashion house had a partnership with the luxury brand Chloé, and she brought on designer Gabriella Hearst to launch the studio's first actual collection. Almost 80% of that collection's materials were lower-impact fabrics made from dead stock and vintage material rather than newly produced textiles, which put real design discipline behind the sustainability branding rather than leaving it as a slogan. She also made a deliberate choice about her own role. Jolie wasn't trying to be the star designer of her own label. She told Vogue she didn't want to be a big fashion designer. She wanted to build a house for other people to become that. That's an ownership mindset, not a celebrity branding mindset. She wasn't renting out her fame for a season. She was constructing a platform other creative people could build careers on, with her as the founder and financier rather than the product. The location she chose for the studio's first store carried its own weight. Atelier Jolie's first permanent retail home opened at 57 Great Jones Street in Manhattan, a carriage house where the artist Jean-Michel Basquiat once lived and worked. After renting the space from its owner, Andy Warhol, picking a Basquiat-Warhol landmark for a sustainable fashion retail concept isn't an accident. It signals she wanted the brand associated with serious creative history, not celebrity spectacle. The same instinct that led her to donate charity jewelry to the Smithsonian, rather than sell it at auction for personal profit. And just like the jewelry line before it, Atelier Jolie became a family project, not a solo one. Two of her children, Zahara and Pax, were heavily involved in the launch, with Pax appearing in the brand's own marketing, wearing pieces made from the studio's patchwork denim collaborations. This wasn't Jolie hiring her kids for a photo op. It was consistent with a pattern she'd already established through the UNHCR missions. And the jewelry line, pull the people she trusts most directly into the infrastructure of what she's building, rather than treating business and family as separate compartments. She was also candid about what founding the studio meant for her personally, at a moment when the Miraval litigation and years of custody battles were still unresolved. She described the transition into a creative workspace as therapeutic after a long process of healing. And in her Vogue interview, she talked about feeling able to rediscover herself through building something productive and creative on her own terms. That's a notably different emotional register than the language in her legal filings against Pitt: controlled, calm, forward-looking, rather than defensive. The bet on Atelier Jolie represents the clearest statement yet of the theme running through this entire financial story. Jolie doesn't chase the biggest possible payday on any single deal. She chases structures she can fully control. A movie paycheck disappears the moment the contract ends. A jointly owned vineyard can turn into a $250 million lawsuit. But a business she founded, named after herself, staffed with artisans she chose, located in a building she picked for its creative history, funded by money she earned, and controls outright. That's an asset. Nobody can drag into a courtroom and argue she doesn't own. It's a smaller venture than Miraval in dollar terms, at least for now. But in terms of what it represents, it might be the most important business decision of her post-divorce life, because it's the first major venture in years that carries zero shared ownership risk. And that sets up the final question of her financial story. After decades of blockbuster paychecks, a charity jewelry empire, a scorched earth winery lawsuit, and a from-scratch fashion house, what does Angelina Jolie's actual net worth look like today? And was building all of this actually worth what it cost her? After everything, the Lara Croft paycheck, the Maleficent record deal, the jewelry line, funding schools, the chateau, the lawsuit, the fashion house, the number that sits at the bottom of Angelina Jolie's balance sheet today is more modest than most people expect. From someone with her resume, current estimates put her net worth at roughly $120 million, according to Celebrity Net Worth. Other estimates run somewhat higher, putting her closer to $200 million. Either way, this is not billionaire territory, and it's genuinely less than what some of her peers who stuck purely to studio franchises have accumulated. That's not an accident, and it's not a failure. It's the direct, calculable cost of every decision detailed in this story. Every time Jolie had a choice between maximizing her personal payout and directing money towards something bigger than herself, she consistently chose the second option. The jewelry line routed 100% of its profits into building schools, rather than into her own accounts. The UNHCR missions, over 60 field missions across more than 20 countries, were self-funded rather than expensed. The Miraval sale, even after a bruising legal fight, produced a settlement that was immediately offset by loan repayments and years of ongoing attorney's fees. And Atelier Jolie, by design, isn't structured to make Jolie the face or the primary profit center. It's built to fund artisans and a sustainability mission first. None of that makes her wealth less real. It reframes what rich means in her specific case. She has a body of work that generated genuine blockbuster paydays. The $33 million Maleficent check, the $35 million Eternals deal, decades of 8-figure movie salaries. That money was real, and it was hers. But she consistently reinvested a huge share of it into ventures that were never designed to compound her personal net worth, in the way a tech founder's equity stake or a hedge fund manager's carried interest would. She built a school-funding jewelry brand instead of a personal jewelry empire. She built a sustainability-focused creative collective instead of a mass-market fashion label chasing licensing revenue. She fought a $250 million countersuit, not primarily to enrich herself further, but, according to her own filings, to establish financial independence and correct what she described as being deliberately frozen out of a business she helped build. The Miraval fight, notably, still isn't over. Even now, Pitt's team continues pursuing discovery, and Jolie's side continues opposing what it calls a mischaracterization of her position. A reminder that at this financial altitude, disputes don't resolve quickly, and legal fees alone can run into the millions before either side sees a final number. That's part of the real cost of the rich life too. Money spent defending money already earned. What's clear looking at the entire arc is that Jolie built something durable rather than something maximal. She has real estate, a functioning fashion house with retail presence in Manhattan, an ongoing philanthropic infrastructure that's operated continuously for more than 2 decades, and 6 children she's actively involved in raising and increasingly bringing into her creative ventures. She has, by any reasonable measure, financial security that will outlast her career. What she doesn't have is the kind of headline-grabbing billionaire number that would make this story tidy. And maybe that's the actual point. Angelina Jolie's rich life was never engineered to produce the largest possible fortune. It was engineered to produce control over a fashion brand nobody can force her out of, control over a charity that answers to her own mission rather than a studio's marketing calendar, and control over the terms of her own independence, even when an ex-husband's legal team is still years later trying to pull her financial history back into a courtroom. The blockbuster paychecks bought the freedom. Everything she did afterward was about making sure that freedom stayed hers.